Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Maxwell Construction, who has been our sponsor since the very beginning. For over 30 years, Maxwell has delivered the highest quality projects by holding to their core values of customer satisfaction, positive attitude, respect, and excellence. So if you have any kind of commercial construction need, give Maxwell Construction a call today at 812-537-2200. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Radio, and I am here with my husband, Merle. Hi, honey.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am excited. We have a great show today.
We have a good show today.
Yeah.
I mean, every show is good, right? Yes. Let's get that straight. But, I think this one is going to hit some people's ears that probably need to hear it.
I have a feeling we're going to assign this for homework.
Yes, this might be a homework show.
This is kind of the meat and potatoes of when we work with couples on how do you protect your marriage? How do you safeguard it from those temptations and those distractions that are out there, especially when it comes to people of the opposite sex? So that would be men for me, obviously, women for you. How do we protect it so that we don't run the risk of infidelity, of confusion and betrayal, mistrust?
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about that.
So, hun, do you know the percentage of marriages that will experience infidelity or affairs?
Wow. I don't, but I have a feeling you do.
I do.
Is this just like on the top of your head?
Yes, I had this in my mind. Well, what I tried to think of is how often that actually walks in our door, is what I was thinking of when I looked that question up, because I don't even know the percentage that walks in our door. We've never actually recorded that or, taken note of it. But it's significantly in our work with couples, right? It's significantly a part of what we deal with. And so the numbers are actually more like in the neighborhood of about 20% or so. And so it depends on who you're looking at. If you're looking at men, it tends to be about 20% of men. If you're looking at women, it's around the about the 15% or so. Wow. So combined, there's about 40% chance that there are going to be people there who are dealing with some sort of infidelity. It also depends on whether they're married or not. If, like people who are living together, cohabitating, that number is definitely up toward the 40%. Married folks are more between the 25 and 30%. So,
wow.
That's at least a quarter of the population.
So you're telling me that couples who are living together or dating, the rate of infidelity is higher.
It is higher. Yeah. It is definitely higher. And then, of course, the breakup rate of that couple of just living together is much higher. So the regular breakup rate is around, we always say, around that 50% mark. And for those couples who are just cohabitating, that's up around 75 to 80% breakup rate. So, again, all of these variables play in. But part of our show here is talking about the idea of, well, how do we protect that? And in this particular case, how do we protect the relationship and keep those affairs from happening?
Yeah, and there's so much temptation out there. The world is telling us so many different things. And who do we believe? Who do we trust in? How do we follow the right plan? So we're going to be talking about that today. But before we do, we want to thank our sponsors, because we have some amazing businesses in our community who follow and support Rock Solid Radio. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Hummel Insurance Group and Maxwell Construction. Those three companies have really said, hey, we believe in what you're doing, and we just want to support and encourage you guys. So we thank them.
Yes, very good. So, all right. So also just a couple brief announcements. One of them, and since we are talking about protecting the marriage, in particular, if you're anywhere close to the tri-state area of the Cincinnati, Ohio area, on February 19th, Bright Christian Church is going to be offering a marriage retreat or kind of workshop that we're calling Secure the Knot. And we're going to be talking about these kinds of things. And so this is a chance to one up the interest and just the investment on your part. It's not true one-on-one counseling, but it's a little bit more, immediate in terms of, it's right in front of our face. We're hearing this. And I think, the benefit of these workshops and things like that is the idea that you attend it together.
Yes.
If you listen to this podcast, that's great, but there's probably a greater chance you're going to listen to it by yourself. But when you
Hope you'll listen to it with your spouse.
But when you get, husband and wife attending a workshop, they both hear the same message. So then they kind of have to digest that together and process it.
Yeah. And so it's a full day. It's like a 9 to 5. I think we open the doors 8:30.
8:30ish, yeah.
But our goal is to give you some time to be intentional about conversation and about direction, vision for your family and your life together, and some work that you want to do, things you want to put in place to protect your marriage. Because we all are about really helping a marriage not just to survive, but to thrive. So brightcc.org is how you
is their website.
Register for that event. Again, it's Saturday, February 19th. It's just a one-day event. We would love for you to join us.
Okay. What are your thoughts about last week's show? Do we want to say anything about that at all?
Well,
that was the LGBTQ
conversation about, as a Christian, how do we respond to if someone we love or know comes out and really kind of wants us, our support. And so how do we navigate that as a Christian? And so I really am thankful, hon, that we're willing to tackle really tough conversations because that's what our families are dealing with.
Right.
And they're asking us for how do we, what does God's word say? How do we handle this? How do we not destroy the relationship? How do we stand for what we believe in? And so how do you navigate the holiness of God's truth with the compassion of God's love and grace? And so that's really what we tackled last week.
Yeah, hopefully, hon, the takeaway from that show was us walking through the truth with love. And, anyone who listened to that show, we are hoping that you heard the love message behind that, because with any sin that we're dealing with. I mean, if I'm dealing with an alcoholic,
yes.
There might be a side of me in one day and in a moment I want to just kick him to the curb.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're called to do,
right?
Right? And so the sinful behavior, we are to reject the sinful behavior, but not the person. And so we have to still love on the person. And that really, I think probably the biggest maybe disruptor in that understanding is whether people would consider it a sinful behavior. And so if you don't consider it sinful behavior, then that's where it's hard for us to get equal footing.
And we actually talked about that. Like if we're not coming from the same biblical framework or foundation, then it's hard to have those kind of conversations. And so we talked about that. Like how do you deal with that? So please, I would love for you to go back and check that out. We're not saying we have all the answers or that we're experts. We are just talking about this is what we work with families every day. This is what we've gleaned from God's word as being truth. And so how do you mesh the two? And so that's what people are asking for. How do we do that?
Yeah. Okay. So, hon, question for you.
Okay.
All right. In your work with couples, what would you say are some of the reasons or what kind of moves somebody into having an affair? Or cheating?
Obviously, that can go across the board. Sometimes there's alcohol or drugs involved that kind of skew our thinking and our really judgment calls. But a lot of times I think, hon, it drills down to the core of I'm not happy. I feel unfulfilled by my partner, whether they're sexually not giving me what I need or not appreciating me or disrespecting me. And so they feel somehow unfulfilled. And sometimes we're looking for it from our spouse, and really it's God that has asked us to, look to him. Like that's what's going to fulfill us. And we look to our partner for something that they can't even give us.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say?
I would say the same thing. And I think the emphasis there is they feel.
Yes.
Sometimes it's, we have a hard time. It's a perception like I'm just not being fulfilled. I'm not being completed. I was expecting something different or whatever. And so then that starts to grow, right? Like that resentment or contempt in the heart. And so it starts to grow. So I would say that that's the bigger motivator behind it. Typically, we always ask a question when we're talking to couples of what their intention, or do they trust the intention of each other? And, a lot of times, I do trust the intention of this person, but there still was an affair. Versus like if we never trusted the intentions of a person, then maybe it's like, I don't trust them in a lot of different
Well,
areas.
and we ask this a lot of couples, like, what's your goal? Like, you're coming in here,
Right.
both of you are in here. So what are your goals? And man, it's like fingernails and blackboard to me, honey. I just want to be happy. Oh my gosh. Because sometimes what if God has made marriage to make us holy, not happy? In the moment, it might be tough, it might be work, but man, there is such blessing and holiness and fulfillment and joy and peace that comes when we do it God's way. And so we're going to kind of talk about how do we protect the marriage the way God designed marriage to be.
Right. And there should be happiness in marriage.
Sure.
Right? Like we do want that. Like how long can you go through the dry desert before you finally perish from dehydration? And so, yes, it's not like we would look at any couple and say, I don't care how miserable it is, you got to stay there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But we also know that there are these times, but hon, it also takes two, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have one person who is doing everything they can to try to do the right measures to keep the marriage going, and the other person is checked out, then that can be a very long walk in trying to figure out how to get through that.
Good point. And I want to clarify that when I say, about happiness. I'm looking at two adults who are almost treating it like a teenager and a kid in a candy store. Like, I want this now.
In the moment.
In the moment, yeah. Temporary, immediate gratification instead of I'm willing to do the work and I'm willing to have some sacrifices here for something that is lasting and something that is healthy. And so I would say, hey, let's change that from happy to healthy. And then I think you're going to get happy as a result of being healthy.
Right,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, they start to come together.
Yeah.
Another question for you.
Man, like, what have you been Googling all this stuff?
Yeah,
and so you're like,
I'm a pretty sharp cookie. So obviously you can look up statistics on this, but do you and do we see success at bringing a marriage back together after infidelity? Like, are you telling me there's a chance here?
Yeah.
What's the percentage rate of being able to pull that marriage back together?
Well, if you Googled it, 60 to 80% of them survive. But really, it's like, what's the quality of the relationship afterwards? And I would say that your marriage can be better after infidelity. I'm not saying you should go out and have an affair to have a better marriage.
Right.
I am saying, though, that if you're willing to do the work, maybe this was the wake-up call. This was the defining moment. This was the red flag. And that you're willing to do the work and make the changes, I think that you can have a marriage even better than before.
Yeah, well, that's really a cool thing, because what you see is marriages were kind of struggling, and then an affair took place. Yeah. So it was kind of on a low end. Then it went deep into the valley with the affair, and then they came and they got help, and you went all the way back, kind of to like, let's learn to relove the right way, and then they experienced something that maybe I mean, I've had couples that say we've never felt this good. Okay, and so actually, like you said, hon, it's not just a marriage surviving. Now it's finally they're on the same page and they're thriving.
Yeah. And so, maybe one of you's come to this understanding before the other that something is off, that I'm not feeling connected. I don't think this is healthy. And you ask for help and the other one's like, I think we're fine. Please listen to them as being serious. Like, even if you think they're fine, obviously your partner doesn't. And so if you don't be prudent in that, then you're missing out on really the red flag of something needs to change, because your partner's saying they're crying out for help.
Yeah.
Speaking of prudent, there's a verse that I believe speaks to this, that we're going to kind of go down the road with healthy boundaries, because, and it doesn't even have anything to do with marriage, but I think it does fall in the marriage category. It says, the prudent see danger and they take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Or in other words, and this is Proverbs 27:12, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton...
I've been called a simpleton before, honey. Is that a derogatory statement?
It's not a flattering compliment.
You simpleton.
The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So if you're the spouse who's been told by their partner, I don't feel connected to you, I feel like something's wrong, I don't love you like I used to, then please be prudent. See that danger ahead of you, that they're crying out for help, and seek that help out before it gets ugly.
Hon, if you'll excuse me for just a second.
Excuse you, you got to go to the restroom?
Yeah, I'm not going to the restroom. But I do think we have boundaries and things we want to go through. But we probably do need to help our couples that are listening recognize some of those red flags. Like, you could just jump in and talk about, well, just do all these boundaries. But there are, if I'm going to be prudent, there are things that we hear this all the time. Oh my gosh, once I started to realize what was going on, I've seen it happening all over around me. So certain red flags that you should probably just be aware of that we see when there is a detachment or coldness, when we're not checking in on each other as much, or there's a little bit of an aloofness, that happens. When there's a protectiveness, we talk about the transparency, like when all of a sudden maybe one of you is protecting your phone a little more or your time a little more and not sharing it. These, I'm not saying right away that that's something that you should start screaming about, but it's like, well, I need to probably check into that.
Well, I think as we go through these boundaries, hon, the red flags are with them. So for instance, if you find yourself more and more at work and you just don't even want to come home, or you find yourself hanging out with your coworkers and stuff, and you really don't spend that time with your family, I think you need to really check, why do you have that kind of work-life balance? Is something going on at home that you just don't want to go home to?
Right.
And so we really have to set a boundary of having a healthy balance and prioritizing our family and our marriage above work. Because man, your spouse is feeling that. If you've poured yourself into your work and you're being expected to give them 24/7, your partner feels that.
So the boundary then is something that the two of you, for work, the two of you come together and say, what is fair and reasonable and healthy for our
marriage? Is this schedule working? Because some people work nights and the wife is like, I hate it, but she doesn't say anything. Or she doesn't know what's going on to her husband when she's sleeping, or vice versa. And so that's scary if one of you doesn't trust that.
Yeah, so it's the two of you coming together and figuring out the work schedule. How about this one, hon? This is where we see when there is all of a sudden kind of an aloofness or separation, and then we see a lot more time being spent or focused on the kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like almost like you'd rather be with the kids and then with just your spouse. That's a red flag. Why is it that they're always going on the date with you? Why is it that they're sleeping in the bed with you? Why is
That's a huge one right there.
That is huge. That is a huge red flag. Because then, even if you're okay with it, your partner may not. And maybe they are. And that's really dangerous because both of you are kind of numb to it.
So the boundary, is actually in that case that you and your spouse saying, how do we protect our time away from our kids? And the idea there, like protecting the bed. Like, a very simple rule is our kids don't sleep in our bed. All right. The idea that a night or two, a week or a month or however you work it out is going to be mom and dad date night where there will not be any kids there. How about this? Just some daily conversation where we say, hey, kids, you need to go outside and play or you need to go do your homework. Mom and I are going to have a little bit of talk time here.
I just recently had that conversation with a couple who literally told me they have no time alone. But their kids are older elementary. It's not like they're little toddlers. They're afraid they're going to stick their finger in the light socket. They're older elementary kids. There's a 6-hour time frame between when they go to bed and when those kids everybody's home. And you can't tell me you can't find 15 minutes alone. That's a red flag. That you're not making that time. They feel guilty, they said. I'm like, you need to show your kids your marriage is a priority.
It'll be a huge gift to your kids.
Yes. Yeah.
I like this one, hon, because this one gets, especially in the workplace, this one gets kind of smoothed over. Who your best friend is or who you're doing a lot of conversation with, okay? And especially when we talk about this in the case of cross-gender. Like here I'm a man, and at work I tend to talk more to the women or a particular woman.
Or, let's say, I've had this before where a couple will be in my office and they'll be talking about challenges and they'll be like, well, my best friend said, and the best friend is of the opposite sex, well, we grew up together.
Right.
We used to live across the street. Yeah, you don't understand. Oh, there's nothing coming between us. Okay, well, you may think that right now, but that other person may not. And the first time your partner upsets you or you feel disconnected from your partner and you run emotionally to that best friend, all bets are off. So That's a red flag. If you're looking at your partner and saying that someone else of the opposite sex is their best friend, your best friend, that's a red flag and it needs a boundary.
Yeah. So the boundary in that case is, and this is one of our general boundaries, our best friends or even our friends, so to speak, that we do daily life with are not of the opposite sex. That doesn't mean that if you have a lady friend over that I can't be friendly to her, but she's not somebody that I hang out with.
And I don't have any secret conversations behind your back with a guy of the opposite sex because we're friends, right? Because then the minute I'm mad at you, I'm going to that person and I'm sharing emotionally and I'm connecting emotionally. And all of a sudden they're so sweet and they're great listeners and they tell me what I want to hear. And then all of a sudden my heart starts to be pulled toward them. And you just got to put that boundary up and say, no, I'm not going to emotionally connect with somebody of the opposite sex and get to that place where I get vulnerable and get really tempted.
Yeah. So another one that we see that is a door that opens up to this opportunity of an affair would be, and I tend to see this more in the work world, where we schedule work meetings with somebody of the opposite sex. And so, hey, we're just going to talk about work. I'm going to meet her for dinner. And, you know, we got this project going on. And listen, work might be the reason why you're meeting, but that might not be the project that you end up getting into.
And traveling with somebody of opposite sex. I think companies are getting smarter about this and they're realizing that that's just opening up a horrible can of worms. But you have the responsibility, even if your boss tells you that you and a coworker of the opposite sex is traveling, you have got to put some healthy boundaries up. Even if there is nothing going on, you don't want anything to go on. And you got to protect that relationship in your marriage.
So that particular boundary we call the Billy Graham rule, because he had that rule that he would not be meeting with anyone of the opposite sex by himself. He would even have people walk through hotel rooms and stuff and case it out just to make sure there was nobody of the opposite sex. As like somebody tried to plant. Basically.
Mike Pence followed this same principle, and he would say, "I'm following the Billy Graham rule. I won't travel with somebody of the opposite sex alone. I won't dine with somebody of the opposite sex alone because I don't want anyone, even if there's nothing going on, to have any suspicion or question about your motives or intentions. So you don't even want to go there. We are huge about this because in our line of work, the last thing we need is somebody to accuse us of fooling around with somebody else's spouse or fooling around on each other. It would just ruin us.
So let me help a little bit with that, because we do occasionally get into a situation where all of a sudden, like we've had sessions before where a husband and wife were supposed to come in and maybe one of them didn't show up. And so here I am with just the wife, or you're there with just the husband. And we're like, okay. So we have to do a little check-in with our spouse. So in my case, you know, I tell Linda, I'm like, hey, you know, so-and-so is not here. If we're both in the same office, then we're fine. Linda's right there. Vice versa with myself and her. So we set some rules up. You know, I've actually, this just happened just the other day. A lady came in, her husband didn't come in. And I told her, I said, so you just need to know, like, if this is how this is going to happen.
If he refuses to keep coming.
I will have to, we still want to get you help. But I will have Linda help you instead of me.
And, you know,
and I explained to her why.
And there's a lot of people who don't, like, I know there's a lot of male counselors out there that counsel women. I get that. We just have decided that that's not the healthiest, especially like me working with teenage boys or you working with teenage girls.
It doesn't happen.
We just set ourselves up for all kinds of accusations, and we just don't need to go there. So
can I even just say there, like, the accusation can ruin your career.
Oh yeah,
you don't have to be guilty. You can just be the accusation that creates enough dirt on you that makes things very difficult.
And we've seen that. You've seen that. I'm sure listening. If you're listening. You've seen it on the radio or seen it on TV of somebody. And people would say, oh, that's sexist. They actually said that about Mike Pence. You know, they were saying, oh, you're so discriminating against. You don't trust women. And he's like, no, I'm safeguarding my marriage and my career by not putting myself in those positions. And that's how we look at it.
Tell us about how you think of transparency, hon. What are some of the things that you've seen break down in terms of transparency? So no secrets kind of thing.
I just heard this just today. The best secret for a healthy marriage is no secrets. And, you know, we believe we've made a commitment that there was nothing that I'm going to hide from my husband, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing or saying or who I'm with that I can't tell you about. Now, obviously, your birthday, your Christmas present, something like that. But
occasionally I do sneak some snacks and stuff that you don't want me to get into. So I will tell you, I'm not totally forthcoming.
No, I find your peanut M&M wrappers in the truck. I'm like, somebody's been went to Home Depot.
More candy.
It is so funny.
They're right. You cannot get out of Home Depot.
It is so funny. Your Home Depot receipt has your Diet Coke, your Coke Zero, and your.
Hey, you can't do a project without a little nutrition.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But
and again, let's just, as we talk about this, all right, there are going to be times when I'll say, call each other out, where your knee-jerk reaction, especially if you get caught off kind of, and you might be a little guilty, you might quickly dismiss it. Oh, honey, you're making a big deal out of nothing.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, and so we have to be really careful. That's why we want to both be on the same page, all right? The idea here is, if I really trust in my marriage and Linda calls me out on something, my knee-jerk reaction might be, I think you're thinking too deeply into this.
It's my business, none of your business.
Yeah, but I have to go back and revisit that and say, okay, wait, let me see it through your eyes. Because the marriage is more important than whether I feel like she's looking at it wrong. And sometimes paranoia, sometimes past history can make us more, I'll say, just sheepish on how we see things, a little bit more aware of, or at least cautious about pursuing these things.
Yeah. And here's what I tell couples all the time. Yes, you should need to give permission to your spouse to look at your phone or to ask you questions. But how about you voluntarily sharing that information with them first? For instance, we've been married over 34 years. I trust you with my life. I trust you with my phone, my computer, all of the things. I have nothing to hide. And so I still want to let you know. I write you a note. Hey, I went down to Kroger's. I'll be back in an hour. I don't have to do that. He's not going to interrogate me if I don't. But I want just to be transparent because I have nothing to hide. And so if I don't tell you that and you ask me, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to hide the fact that I might have gone to TJ Maxx and I might have bought a new sweater, But that's the kind of thing that really builds intimacy and trust when we are freely giving it without being asked or coerced about it.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems that you have with infidelity is the erosion and breaking of trust. And so part of what that is, hon, is just the keeping trust maintained.
Yes.
And so on the occasion that I maybe don't write the note, you're not freaking out because I don't have a history of not being found, right?
But if I asked you, hey, where were you today? And you said, well, I went to Home Depot. You're like, none of your business. That's going to be a red flag. If you get defensive and angry about me asking where you were today, Speaking of which, hon, and this is a huge thing that we see a lot. Old flames. And exes, whether it be an ex-spouse, ex-girlfriend, a childhood friend, when we allow those people to kind of sneak back into our life or reconnect with us, and then we're all afraid that our spouse might freak out, and so we just keep it a secret, that just opens up Pandora's box.
Yeah, and that can be difficult in these days of social media and Facebook and things like that. I mean, I see people that I went to high school with that either asked to friend me or vice versa. And, we've tried to make it a point that if somebody like that happens, I'll even say, kind of like, do you know this person? Or this is a person I went to school with. And the other side of that is, feel free to look at my Facebook. Feel free, those kind of things, keeping it open. You just have to use some common sense and guardianship in terms of the marriage.
Right.
So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah. And so if you did have an old flame reach out to you, like, hey, I saw you on Facebook, I haven't seen you in decades. That's okay. Like, you're not having an affair, but I would be the first person to tell would be Merle. I would let him know, hey, my old boyfriend just messaged me out of the blue. And, I'd be honest about it. That way, if you did see it on Facebook or, whatever, that I'm not keeping you a secret. I'm not hiding anything.
And it would be okay for me to weigh in on that. But I'm not comfortable with that because maybe I know a little bit about that past experience. Maybe I don't. Maybe I know our quality of relationship right now. There's a lot of dynamics that go on there, but I have a right to weigh in on that. Like, I'd rather you not be putting us in that situation.
Yeah. So speaking of online, in this digital age where you can connect to the world, I think it's that to protect the integrity of our marriage, we've got to have some safeguards. So as you said, hon, no hidden phones, no secret accounts, no blocked passwords. Like, I want you to be able to get to my things. And honestly, that's going to keep me from going down those bad roads because I know that you could look because I've kept it open for you. So if you're hiding those things and if you're sneaking and if you're blocking your spouse from those things, why? I would ask you why. I think that's a red flag.
And let's be careful here and go back to that little word called intention. If you hear this message and all it does is prompt you to see, oh, I got to go to another level of sneakiness.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have a bad intention problem. And intention is really, if I can't trust intentions, then we've got to go all the way back to the drawing board on building trust again. Why are we in the marriage?
Okay, so I'm going to speak to the women out here who really have created more of a problem by the way they've approached this, okay? They have become so attacking and so defensive and so ugly, and they're like looking for every little thing that's why the spouse will say, because I've heard this many times, that's why I've blocked them, because they get so out of control. They get so crazy. And so they think that, if I friended a guy that asked to be my friend, who is that? Why do you know him? Like, I went to grade school with them, but every little thing is, attacked. Then you got to be careful because they're not going to want to be honest with you. So come at it with a not so defensive, ugly attitude to want to build intimacy.
All of these cases can be very individual, so we just have to be careful. But I think if we keep the line of communication open and the intentions are good, we want to really protect and trust in each other. So again, if you need help with these kinds of things, or if you've experienced a level of infidelity or an affair in your relationship, one thing I think that's important that we take away from this message is it doesn't have to mean the end of your marriage.
No.
Okay, it doesn't. It oftentimes is the end of the marriage, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so please reach out, get help, whether you seek some counseling, some therapy somewhere, whether you contact Linda or I over at Rock Solid Families, whatever it is, it does not have to be the end of your marriage. Your marriage, we always talk about the idea of, is your marriage worth throwing away? How much is that going to cost you? What's it going to cost your kids? What's it going to cost you in your life? What's it going to cost you in terms of just how your mind will just go to such a dark place through divorce?
Or is it worth fighting for?
Yeah.
And so there's couples that will dig their heels in and say, I deserve this. I deserve my privacy. I deserve this relationship. And so there's two things left that I want to talk about, hon, before we wrap up. That I think that is really, the world is selling us a bag of lies when it comes to this. And one of them is pornography, okay? I have so many people, men and women, who will say, it just spiced up our relationship. It added flavor to our relationship. And can I just tell you, it does not spice up your relationship for the good. It erodes the trust and the intimacy of your relationship. It is a proven fact, scientifically proven, that it does not help the relationship long term. So don't buy into that.
The misnomer is that that people buy that idea because you'll get some sex therapist or something that will be talking about it. And in the very short time, if you have two people who kind of are excited and interested in it, it may enhance things in that brief moment. But we almost always see things blow up because you can't share an emotional life with people outside of your family at that level.
Yeah, it's actually chemically dopamine hit and oxytocin hit that is like connecting you to that fantasy, to that pornography. Same thing with drugs, hon, is that I actually have couples who think getting high together really builds their relationship, and it doesn't. It erodes it, and so you tend to have this addiction component where it's never enough, and so that's where it just feeds the addiction, not the building of the relationship. And then the other thing, hon, is outside partners,
Mm-hmm.
the swingers, that believe that, hey, we both agree
Right.
that we can share each other.
It's kind of like an approved infidelity situation.
Yeah.
Right. We approve that both of us go out and do our thing.
That doesn't work so well either. So that has a lot of mistrust and erosion of the relationship and the intimacy between the two of you. So those are not, so I would put up a healthy boundary and safeguard from that.
Those are huge points. And, the culture is going to really talk to you about the feel good, and you'll even get friends that support that. You find yourself in conversations that's, almost are selling it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's why it's really important that you get grounded in what this relationship looks like. People, by their nature, there's a level of jealousy, and that jealousy, there's such a thing as good jealousy, right? God is a jealous God, right? There's such a level, or a certain level of good jealousy, not paranoia, like you talked about before, like I can't do anything, but that idea of like, no, I want you to me.
Yeah. I want to protect this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing we'd ask you to do in our challenge is, before there's infidelity or accusations with your spouse, listen to the show together, sit down and write down some safeguards that you two agree on you're going to implement today. Okay. And I would write them down. That way, if there's down the road any confusion or crossing the line, you can say, hey, this is what we both agreed on back in January of 2022.
If there has been infidelity, if the affair is there, that can be the hardest secret to break, to say, this is not what I want. But restoration is possible. And I think if you can look at what you're giving up for what you're getting, I think that is the thing that can help motivate you to say, I'm just going to go ahead and get this out in the open. Okay. So, and we want to help with that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that has happened in our office, hon, where there was full disclosure, and it was ugly and it was painful. But man, it was like major surgery was going on the relationship. And God tells us in his word that anything we keep in the dark, Satan uses against us. That's those secrets, right? That's that temptation that we fell to and that we're ashamed of. But if we keep it in the dark, Satan continues to keep us chained and bound by that. And he keeps that chasm between you and your spouse. But anything you bring out in the light, God uses for his glory. And that's where we find redemption and healing. And that's what we want for you in your marriage.
Yeah. Rules and what we would call boundaries on your marriage might seem, especially if you're not used to them, might seem like they're very restrictive, like they're holding you back, like you're captive. And actually the opposite is true. Okay. There's freedom in that. Like there's freedom. Linda and I can experience freedom in all the other parts of our life because of the level of trust and stability that we have with each other. So we don't have to wonder what is going on at the core of what we live every day. We've got that part down. And so we can go and live a life of freedom in so many other ways, the adventures, the exploration of life. And so don't get bogged down. Yes, when you first start boundaries, like when you first have to kind of lay your phone out there, it might feel like, oh, I'm being watched by Big Brother. But eventually, those things are just how we roll.
Yeah. And I would say once you decide what your boundaries are, then please tell somebody else. Tell a family member, tell a friend, tell your adult children what you two have decided you're going to do. That brings some accountability there and also some encouragement. And by the way, you model for your family and friends what healthy looks like. And share the show, because we really have used this so many times to see families and couples restored. And we want that for you too.
All right. So that is our show on helping to protect your marriage with some boundaries and being more proactive at actually doing the work to keep the marriage protected and moving forward in a healthy way. So we would like to thank our sponsors of Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solution, and Hummel Insurance. We also want to just thank all you listeners out there as we continue to grow our message and to get our message out there. We need you guys to help these kind of conversations. So please spread and share our shows out. when it comes to rating times, give us a 5-star rating. Get us up on the search engine. So help us out with that. So we just want to thank all you guys for continuing to be part of the Rock Solid family.
Yeah. Remember, healthy boundaries is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. And it's the way you protect your marriage for a lifetime and protect your own heart. So thank you for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day. All right, we're here early for your appointment with a funeral and so on. We just drove your information for you earlier. Oh gosh.
Oh, that's wild. I'm actually running 20 minutes late. Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Hummel Insurance Group for sponsoring today's show. Hummel Insurance Group now owns and operates 7 different offices located throughout the tri-state area. For over 50 years now, the Hummel Insurance Group has been assisting customers with insurance needs and questions. For all your insurance needs, contact Hummel Insurance Group at 812-537-1785. Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. They offer a wide selection of high-quality plants, landscaping materials, and home decor. They do amazing high-quality work and can help you transform your indoor and outdoor living spaces into something beautiful. So stop by Casey's Outdoor Solutions today and let them know you appreciate their support for Rock Solid Radio. Visit Casey's today at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana.